Good morning, hi to all. Всем привет. As you probably noticed, it's a bit different compared to the previous videos that I have recorded. Now I have a waiting scene in the beginning of the video that's based on the screen that I use, the picture that I used for the thumbnail for my videos, right? And the webcam is in the hands of the man. And I have just looked into his soul. That's funny. Yeah, but the thing is that I just decided to add some um, mm, difference into the video. Anyways, I haven't recorded the episode for this series for a long time. I think more than a couple of months. And today I decided to make one. I think it's somehow related to the weather. Yeah, seriously, because these videos, I usually record these videos in the morning. Uh, so it's like 9 o'clock in the morning now. Could have been earlier, could be earlier, sorry. So it could be 6 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock, 7 anyways. But even though it's 9 o'clock, sometimes I want to sleep more. But the thing is that why have I said that it's related to the weather? Because it's winter now, and in winter, sometimes you feel like sleeping more. Yeah, I don't know. Just try it. So pretty much this video is gonna be. I'm not sure about who actually. You will see it in the thumbnail of the video already. But as of now, I'm recording this video. I don't know who I'm gonna be talking about yet. Uh, we're gonna go into the folder and choose who about. Um, so let's do this. Okay, I have several guys here. We have Annette Bayer. There is already one video about her. And maybe it's a good idea to make several videos about one philosopher. So Aquinas. I don't remember have I made video about Aquinas or not. I will try to. Yeah, I'll check this now. It's probably easier to check which videos I have done. So there's one about Annette Bayer. It's number 3. Stuart Mill, the 4th one. Immanuel Kant, 2nd one. Socrates. So 4. This video is number 5. No. Socrates is number 5. I have already done 5 videos. So this video is number 6 now. Already. Socrates, Kant, Mill, Annette Bayer. Socrates, Kant, Mill, Annette Bayer. Annette Bayer. Kant, Mill, Socrates. Okay. So I just don't have one thumbnail here. Number 1, and I think the first video was about Plato. Okay, I'll quickly check that. Anyways, it doesn't take that much time because video lasts like an hour, at least an hour, and it doesn't take that much time. I'll just check it in YouTube. I don't have these recordings on my computer, which I think isn't the best idea, but the thing is that anyways, it's on the web, it's online, but better to have original on the computer, but it just takes a lot of space. I think it's a lot of space. Socrates, John Stuart Mill, Annette Baer, Immanuel Kant, and John Rawls. The first one is John Rawls, quite interesting actually. So we're choosing from Aquinas, Aristotle, Epicurus, Hobbes, Locke, Peter Singer, Plato, Rawls, Socrates, Rawls, Socrates, Annette Baer, Kant. Ебать, sorry about that, because I'm just a bit sleepy in the morning. I can't find which one is the fifth one. Ай, блядь. Rawls, Socrates, Mill, Annette Baer, Kant. Okay, I have found it, блядь, finally enough, several minutes later. So, we're choosing between Aquinas, Aristotle, Epicurus, Hobbes, Locke, Peter Singer, and Plato. The previous one, I remember which one the previous one. I'm not gonna check it now, блядь, anyway. Anyways, let's do Epicurus. Epicurus. Hmm. Блядь, закройся уже нахуй, в пизду, блядь, не надо мне нахуй. Okay. So, as usual, we're gonna check the biography first. Go through the words that are there. Okay. So biography, I usually check biography on this website. You know that. I have already told it fucking several times, probably. Okay, let's go. Epicurus. It shows his image. Okay, so Epicurus, 341 to 271 before Christ. So it's 2000 years ago. Epicurus is one of the major philosophers in the Hellenistic period. As I remember, it's a period of several hundred years that included 2 or 3 other philosophers. I may be mistaken, but anyway, let's have a look what it says. The 3 centuries, yeah, following the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, and of Aristotle in 322. Epicurus developed an unsparingly materialistic metaphysics. Unsparingly. Okay, that's first word that we're checking. Sparingly. Skupa. Unsparingly probably is an opposite. Unsparingly materialistic metaphysics, empiricist epistemology, and hedonistic ethics. Epistemology. Okay. Sorry, I have forgotten something. Epistemology, теория познания. Okay. Epicurus taught that basic constituents of the world are atoms, uncuttable bits of matter, flying through empty space, atoms, and uncuttable bits of matter flying through empty space. It's interesting because it says uncuttable. I'm not sure. Did he actually think that they are uncuttable bits of matter? Because it's in our century, like 2000 years later, we know that they can be cut in halves or in quarters or in something. But then I'm not sure. They probably didn't do that then. So it's interesting explanation. But anyway, uncuttable bits of matter flying through empty space. It's the basic constituents of the world. And he tried to explain all natural phenomena in atomic terms. Epicurus rejected the existence of Platonic forms and an immaterial soul. He rejected the existence of Platonic forms and immaterial soul. So there is no immaterial soul. And he said that the gods have no influence on our lives. Epicurus also thought skepticism was untenable. Okay, but I don't know what's the word. Of theories, etc., incapable of being defended or justified. Skepticism was untenable, incapable of being justified, понятно, and that we could gain knowledge of the world relying upon the senses. He thought that the point of all one's actions was to attain pleasure. Okay, so the main thing in life is ебать нахуй to attain pleasure, conceived of as tranquility. Tranquility это вроде как спокойствие, вроде бы. I think it's a disposition free from stress or emotion, an untroubled state, free from disturbances, a state of peace and quiet when somebody sucks. Fucking, блядь, ладно, пошли нахуй. Так, короче. For oneself, to gain pleasure for oneself. To gain pleasure for oneself. How selfish is that, блядь, пиздец, нахуй. He thought that the point of all one's actions was to attain pleasure for oneself, and that this could be done by limiting one's desires. Maybe attain pleasure, which means in this case tranquility, as he thought, for oneself, maybe means that you can be free from stress, maybe not necessarily only for yourself. So if you have stress that is based on your for instance, bad situation in relation to your relatives or something, uh, or something else. Probably a good example to say that if your relatives is bad, like are in bad situation, you feel bad, which means that probably if you want to attain pleasure, tranquility for yourself, you will probably help them, and this is how you can gain pleasure, which is the main point of all actions. So probably it doesn't necessarily mean that someone is that selfish, and that this could be done by limiting one's desires. Okay, attaining pleasure uh, could be done by limiting one's desires and by banishing the fear of the gods and of death. Okay, let's have a look at the word banish. Okay. Expel from a community or group. Expel as if by official decree. Drive away. By banishing what? And by banishing the fear of the gods and of death. Okay. And that this could be done by limiting one's desires and by banishing the fear of the gods and of death. It's interesting. Couple of strange things that we find straight away in here that Epicurus thought, as how it's said here at least. Okay, so I mean that in here it says that Epicurus rejected the existence of Platonic forms and an immaterial soul. So he rejected the existence of soul, and he suggested that pleasure or tranquility could be achieved by banishing the fear of the gods and death. So if you want to be tranquil and if you want to attain pleasure, don't be afraid or don't have fear of gods and death. Probably it's a good idea to not be scared of death, but I'm not sure about the second one that says about gods. Yeah, maybe you can be friends with God, and maybe it's a good idea not to be afraid of God. But I think that it's such a power of God that he probably should possess or should have, because it's power and he should be powerful. Otherwise, I don't know, those who are here, well, who believe that there is God, may have different view of him. Okay, so Epicurus' Gospel of Freedom, Epicurus' Gospel of Freedom from Fear proved to be quite popular, and communities of Epicureans flourished for centuries after his death. Ебать. It's interesting for me to know what that word means. Процветать, расцветать, цвести, завитушка, преуспевать, так, процветать. Okay, so and communities of Epicureans flourished for centuries after his death. Okay, and it's a brief explanation, but the main thing that's gonna be in the video is based on the materials that I have here on my computer, because this is a website that I have opened. Maybe next videos will be will be based on the materials from this website, because it's good material, and also can be used to make videos of such topic. Ебать, я сцену... Ох, нихуя себе, блять. I have just opened the thing that should have been turned on for the previous 20 minutes or something. Yeah, 20 minutes. Sorry about that. So I think it's not a problem. So again, okay, so life of Epicurus. Epicurus was born around 341 years before Christ. 7 years, it's like, 7 years after Plato's death. 7 years after Plato's death. Okay, and grew up in the Athenian colony of Samos, an island in the Mediterranean Sea. He was about 19 when Aristotle died, and he studied philosophy under followers of Democritus and Plato. Okay, so this is another thing that I do during the videos. When I read something and I see influences or something like that, I write it down so that I can do next videos in this series of episodes that are somehow related to what I have done before. So this is the influential a person who had influence on Plato, right? Under followers, he studied philosophy under followers of Democritus and Plato. So I will write it down. Okay. Demo. Is he here at all? Okay, I'm not gonna look it up now. I will just Democritus. I will write it. Okay, and I usually write it down into additional. Okay. Epicurus founded his first philosophical schools in Mytilene and Lampsacus before moving to Athens around 306 BC. There, Epicurus founded the garden. Okay, there was such a thing as the garden. A combination of philosophical community and school. The residents of the garden put Epicurus teachings into practice. Epicurus died from kidney stones around 271 or 270 before Christ. After Epicurus' death, Epicureanism continued to flourish as a philosophical movement. Communities of Epicureans sprang up throughout the Hellenistic world. Along with Stoicism, I have actually written it down. Actually, an interesting thing to have a look at. Maybe it's the next one that's in the queue for the videos. It was one of the major philosophical schools competing for people's allegiances. Верность, преданность, лояльность. That's what it says about Epicureanism. It was one of the major philosophical schools competing for people's allegiances. Epicureanism went into decline with the rise of Christianity. Certain aspects of Epicurus thought were revived during the Renaissance and early modern periods, when reaction against scholastic Aristotelianism led thinkers to turn to mechanistic explanations of natural phenomena. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so thoughts about certain aspects of Epicurus certain aspects of Epicurus thought were revived during the Renaissance and early modern periods, when reaction against scholastic neo-Aristotelism led thinkers to turn to mechanistic explanations of natural phenomena. Okay, so many things happen in the world, and new schools of philosophy arise. Sometimes something disappears, and this is what happened when a reaction against scholastic neo-Aristotelianism led thinkers to turn to mechanistic explanations of natural phenomena. That's when Epicureanism went into decline with the rise of Christianity. Certain aspects of Epicureanism thought were right through the Renaissance. The Renaissance is in 19th century. Wait. 18th century. Oh, wait. 15th and 16th centuries. Okay. So, further on it says about sources. Anyway, yeah, it says about sources. I'll have a look. The first sentence is probably enough. Epicurus was a voluminous writer, which means that he probably made a lot of work, a lot of volumes of his work, but almost none of his own work survives. Almost none, which means still something is there or somewhere. Of his own work survives. A likely reason for this is that Christian authorities found his ideas ungodly, because there is no soul. Diogenes Laertius, who probably lived in the 3rd century CE, wrote a 10-book Lives of the Philosophers, 10 book Lives of the Philosophers, which includes 3 of Epicurus' letters. Okay, so I see. Also, further on, it speaks about metaphysics. It's the teachings of Epicurus, arguments for the existence of atoms and void, properties of atoms, limitlessness of the universe. Okay, but thing is that all those things are in the materials that I have. Maybe not all, but some. And in these videos I usually go through those materials. I have already said that I will probably use in the next videos something from this website, maybe another site as well, but in this one we're not gonna do that. And it's pretty much enough for the biography and intro for the Epicurus. Okay, I will leave the browser so we can use Wikipedia or something else. Okay, so background Epicurus. It's for the next. I will need vocabulary and that. Okay. Vocabulary, hedonism, the belief that pleasure or happiness is the highest god. Good, good, good. So an interesting thing is that this vocabulary is based on something. So when I have a look at words in word web, it's based on something, and here hedonism, it's based on something. So I'm not sure. I have several questions. When was this term or notion introduced? Is he the first one who introduced the notion of hedonism? I don't know. And is this explanation is actually what he thought about it, or it's actually what we now think what it is? But anyway, if it's here, I'll have a look what it says. Hedonism is the belief that pleasure or happiness is the highest good. Pleasure or happiness is the highest good. Hedonist, a person who follows the doctrine of hedonism. Hedonistic, the adjective used to describe an action that is follows the doctrine of hedonism, produce pleasure. Okay, justify, explaining reasons for something. Pleasure, the enjoyment or satisfaction coming from doing what is liked, the state of feeling pleased. Desires, something that is wished or wanted. Eliminate, to remove or get rid of something completely. A maxim, principle or a rule of conduct, the way someone should behave. A doctrine, a particular position, principle or policy that is taught by a religion or government. A particular position, principle or policy that is taught by a religion or government. A doctrine. Понятно. Mortality, the state of condition of being capable of dying. Don't confuse this word with morality. The opposite is immorality. Pledge. A pledge is a promise or agreement to do or not to do something. Pledge. A pledge is a promise or agreement to do or not to do something. If you pledge something, you're promising to do or not to do something. Okay, reciprocal, mutual, something that is equivalent to something else. In example, a reciprocal pledge to do something means for both parties to complete the equivalent task. Okay, incline, to have a mental tendency or preference to do something. Mental tendency or preference to do something. Inclination, and countable, something which a person tends to do. Something which a person tends to do. Inclination. In example, what they are inclined to do. Ебать, introduction takes 34 minutes. It's interesting. Okay. So I have looked through these terms. I'm not gonna close it because maybe I will need it later on. So how many? It's just 5 pages. 5 pages should be all right. Okay, so cultural and ethical values, lecture week 5. Lectures week 5. Epicurus on happiness and the fear of death. Anyways, the classical period of Greek philosophy is usually called the Hellenistic period. So Hellenistic period is classical period, and it took 300 years. We spoke about that. It said it, and it took I think, three philosophers. No, probably there were more philosophers in this period, but the main ones were probably like three of them. The classical period of Greek philosophy is usually called the Hellenistic period, in contrast to the period immediately after. In contrast, which is called the Hellenistic period. Wait a sec, what does it mean, блядь? The classical period of the Greek philosophy is usually called the Hellenistic period, in contrast to the period immediately after, which is called the Hellenistic period. Hellenic, блядь, I have mixed two words, нахуй, пиздец. I have just thought, that's strange. It says that this one is called, the classical is Hellenistic, and the next one is called Hellenistic as well. I thought, what it means, блядь. So the classical period of Greek philosophy is called Hellenic period. In contrast to the period immediately after, the one that goes after the classical, which is Hellenic, is Hellenistic period. Hellenistic period. So the Hellenistic period begins with the death of Alexander the Great, which is 300 years before Christ, and reaches the Hellenistic, and reaches until the early Christian era, Christian era. In philosophy, it marks the period from the death of Aristotle to the beginnings of Christianity. It marks, in philosophy, it marks the period from the death of Aristotle to the beginnings of Christianity. Okay, so also Aristotle died in this period. Not only Alexander the Great, but Aristotle. Beginning of Christianity, it doesn't tell when it started. Beginning of Christianity in this is the point before Christ and after death of the Christ. So this was the beginning of Christianity, right? 2022 years ago. Aristotle's school, the Lyceum, and Plato's school, the Academy, both continued to flourish during this period. But two novel philosophers, I'll have a look what that means. Роман, новый, новаторский, новелла, новый, okay, novel, new. But two novel philosophies, came to dominate the period. Epicureanism and Stoicism. Okay, so probably, but the next video that I'm gonna be making, or that I'm gonna make, is about Stoicism, because I have thought about it already several times, and it's probably interesting. We are going to examine the philosophy of Epicurus. Okay, so I know it have already taken much of your time, but those who have time for this probably may enjoy the continuation of this video. I'm gonna go make coffee for myself, and it's not gonna take more than a second for you, because I'm just gonna press pause on the recording. Okay, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, 1 second passed. Yes, so we continue. So the ethics of the Epicureans and the Stoics The Stoics differ markedly both from each other and from both Plato's and Aristotle's philosophers. So Stoics are the ones, the followers of Stoicism, which we're gonna look in the next video. The ethics of the Epicureans and the Stoics differ markedly both from each other and from both Plato's and Aristotle's philosophy. They are sometimes called survival ethics. They are sometimes called survival ethics, and this reflects the fact that, in contrast to Hellenic philosophy, to the classical philosophy, they emphasize the possibility of living a good life in the midst of a hostile and unpredictable environment. Interesting. So, no matter what happens, like war or something else, you still can have a good life. Probably maybe in another place, or maybe not too far. I'm not too sure. And in classical philosophy, it means that the opposite. So you cannot have good life. You cannot have good life if there's a war somewhere. So I'll read it again. I'll read it again. They are sometimes called survival ethics, and this reflects the fact that, in contrast to Hellenic philosophy, which is Hellenic period, the classical period of Greek philosophy, in contrast to Hellenic philosophy, they emphasize the possibility of living a good life in the midst of a hostile and unpredictable environment. Unpredictable is alright. So many unpredictable things happen in the world. Yeah, but with hostile, the Hellenistic period is characterized by collapse of the city-state. The Hellenistic period is characterized by the collapse of the city-state, or polis, is the fundamental structure of Greek politics and culture. So, polis and the city-state means that city as a state, probably, as the fundamental structure of Greek politics and culture. So, the fundamental structure. So, the city, which is kind of like a state, is no longer a fundamental structure of the politics, of the Greek politics and culture. I'm not sure how it was at the same time in other places, because policies, I don't know, let's have a look what polis means, because there are megapolises. For us now, it's just a big city. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a capital of the country. Uh, thing is that to discuss something, you need to know a lot about it, but I think I still can do this, even though I don't know many things. The force of policemen and officers. A city or a city-state in ancient Greece. Okay. Hellenic ethics, which is the classical Greek classical period, Hellenic ethics. The ethics of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. That's what I said, because I said about three philosophers. These are Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Aristotle appears to articulate Hellenic ethics. They appear to articulate and refine appears to articulate and refine the idea of a good life as it would be lived within the Greek polis. The idea of a good life as it would be lived within the Greek polis. So it's a good life in a city. In the much more cosmopolitan and politically unstable environment of Greece after the death of Alexander, however, the appeal of this vision inevitably waned. Бывать, понятно. In the much more cosmopolitan and politically unstable environment, which means that it's unpredictable and hostile. So, environment of Greek after the death of Alexander, however, the appeal of this vision inevitably waned. Понятно. Epicureanism is a philosophy named after its founder Epicurus, who lived in 341 and 271 before Christ, who began a philosophical community in Athens called the Garden, where Epicureans sought the ideal Epicurean life, a life of tranquility through philosophical discourse, political disengagement. So because they thought that doesn't matter what happens in the world, you still can have a good life. So if shit happens in political disengagement, politics, yeah, lots of shit connected, related to politics, but they are just disengaged from this from those bad things, and a kind of cult of friendship, so they're just disengaged. The garden flourished for something like 500 years. Блять, that's a lot. 500 years. So Epicurus wrote voluminously on many topics, but very little has survived. I wonder why. It's already said that Christians and Christianity that started after his death or close to the times when he died were kind of thought that he's ungodly, and they probably could destroy or I don't know, demolish, or no, not demolish, not a good word for that, but probably they could eliminate his work. Could be interesting. Thriller, yeah, but Epicurus has survived. Very little has survived. So there's still something that survived. I wonder whether they are originals and where are they kept. Could be interesting to check it online. 3 letters remain. So just 3 letters. One on astronomy, one on physics, and one the letter to Menoetius, the most important on ethics. The most important on ethics. Menoetius. I'll have a look. Бля. Mencius. Mencius. Maybe it tells his name in Latin. Is that him? Menoetius. Mencius was a 4th century BCE Chinese thinker whose importance in the Confucian tradition is second only to that of Confucius himself. Okay, let's have a look. I'll write it down because for me it's interesting the Chinese philosophy. I'll write it down. Okay. So, one of his works, which is Letter to Menoetius, survived. Uh, the letter, one of the letters, the most important on ethics. The most important on ethics, the letter to Menoetius, a collection of ethical maxims. The principal doctrines also survives. Okay, so forward. You will find links to both the principal doctrines and the letter to Menoetius on the lecture page of the course website. Much of what we know about Epicurean philosophy, especially Epicurean natural philosophy, comes from a long poem by the Roman poet Lucretius, De Rerum Natura, on the nature of things. It's quite interesting because when you watch something, watch a movie, for instance, in original, or read a book in original, it's very often thought. I think maybe a majority, but anyway, it's thought that it's better to read it in original. I think that it's a very good idea to do it in original because, but there are some things related to that because it's in original. For instance, for me as a Russian speaker, I will read the original and I will understand what it tells. If I read something in English, for instance, or in another language, or in Spanish, it's not that good actually. I mean, my skill in Spanish. But anyways, some other language or Latin, I will read it. I will not see it as an original, even though, for instance, like English, I will not see it as an original. I may misunderstand something, uh, and that's why it's very important to have a very good uh, interpretation, or very good what's the name? What's the name? It starts with A. Uh, I will try to remember it in a second. Um Adaptation. Adaptation. Yeah. maybe in the movies it's something different. By telling adaptation, I mean that it is something translated from original into another language, but it tells the same. Translation or interpretation, it means the same. Maybe it's another word. For me, it's interesting because I'm a linguist, interpreter, and I have tried looking the original of Agatha Christie a couple of times, and for me, I know, like, wait, it could be interesting, but even though I speak, it's hard for me to understand it. For natural speaker, not natural, native speaker. For native speaker, it's not a difficult language probably. For native speaker, difficult language could be or maybe something that comes from Shakespeare. When we look at Shakespeare, it's pretty much. There are many words that we don't understand. We need to look at an old language to understand it. And why I thought about it, because there are originals of this works. So it tells here Roman poet Lucretius and his work on the nature of things. So interpretation and translation lets us know that it's on the nature of things. But separate words may have shades of meanings that may mean differently. And have a look. It's de rerum natura. It's in Latin probably. Yeah, it's in Latin. And if you have a look at Latin, I had a course of Latin. I remember some things about it, but I'm not that much skilled in Latin so that I can read it. So that I can understand it. I mean, I can read it, but I cannot understand it. I cannot understand it that much. Something from it I get. Okay. But the main thing is what the main thing I thought is people who understand the original, for instance, Latin, who are native speakers, people who understand the Latin, may or can read those works of those philosophers, and they will understand what this means better, probably, or will understand it more compared to those who read it in translation or interpretation. But it's not the main point of this video. I have just I just decided to tell this because I thought it's important. Anyway, Epicurus advanced an ethics of hedonism. The previous paragraph said about the works that are left after his death, and there are 3 or 4 of them. So, Epicurus advanced an ethics of hedonism. The one true and proper goal of life is the pursuit of pleasure, but this is not all what it may at first seem. Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. Because pleasure, in here, it said before that pleasure is something like tranquility, and it's not connected with hostile and unpredictable environment that surrounds someone who is hedonist, for instance. Epicurus advanced an ethics of hedonism. The one true and proper goal of life is the pursuit of pleasure, but this is not at all what it may at first seem. Epicurus's hedonism is what is usually called negative hedonism. Epicurus's hedonism is what is usually called negative hedonism. To see the point of this, consider a strongly contrasting case. That of the earlier Greek philosopher and hedonist Aristippus. Okay, so this is the answer for the question. The question that I had before. Was he the first who introduced the notion of hedonism? Because he lived in when? Бля. Okay, blah. I just don't remember when he lived, but 300 years before, 300 years before death of Jesus. So, to see the point of this, consider a strongly contrasting case, that of the earlier Greek philosopher and hedonist. He's also a hedonist, Aristippus. I will write it down, because for me, I can have a look at hedonist. (435 and 355). So he kind of lived 100 years before, 100 years, maybe 100 years, yeah, but I suppose that it's 100 years before Epicurus. Aristippus was a student of Socrates and founded a school in his hometown of Cyrene. So they usually found schools. A Greek colony in North Africa. Whose followers were called Cyrenaics. Cyrenaics. It's the name of the town is Cyrene, and they are named Cyrenaics. The Cyrenaics held that the one proper goal of life was the pursuit of pleasure. Pursuit of pleasure. The most pleasure in the most intense form that is possible for us, particularly the sensual pleasures of good food, fine wine, and sex. So, the Cyrenaics, the followers of the philosopher who lived 100 years before Epicurus, Aristippus. His followers thought that the one proper goal of life was the pursuit of pleasure, the most pleasure in the most intense form that's possible for us, particularly the sensual pleasures of good food, fine wine, and sex. Food, alcohol, and sex. Nothing survives of Aristippus' writings. Nothing survives of Aristippus' writings. They probably ate it, drank it, and fucked it, блядь. But still, it may seem funny, but it's not all thoughts. These are not all thoughts behind his teachings, probably. It's just one sentence. Maybe, probably they had, like, broad view of the world based on their main maxims or something, or doctrine, how it's said in the words before the lecture. Nothing survives of Aristippus's writings, but we have some idea of his philosophy. Nothing survived at all, nothing completely. But we have some idea of his philosophy from ancient commentators. Ideas of his philosophy from ancient commentators. Aristippus appears to have held the view that immediate gratification is wiser than calculated prudent behavior. I will highlight it. Aristippus appears to have held the view that immediate gratification is удовлетворение, удовольствие, наслаждение. Immediate gratification is wiser than calculated, prudent, благоразумный, предусмотрительный, осторожный, prudent behavior. It's such a statement, that may bring you to the thought: what if one gets pleasure from prudent behavior? So if he behaves himself or herself in a prudent way, he satisfies himself kind of at any moment, at any time. He has satisfaction of something, so he satisfies some of his needs. He satisfies some of his necessities by prudent behavior. What it says that that immediate gratification is wiser than calculated prudent behavior. Immediate gratification. Okay, so it says that it's wiser. It's wiser to immediately gratify some need, probably, than calculatedly, prudently behave yourself in a course of satisfying it. Probably it's better to do it firstly than do it properly, but who knows when. I don't know, it's an interesting thing. When asked about the painful consequences of his advice, he is supposed to have said that a wise person should never forego certain pleasures. He said that a wise person should never forego certain pleasures of the present for uncertain, merely possible pains of the future. Да. Okay, so never choose something that you're gonna probably get in the future if you can get something straight away. When asked about the painful consequences of his advice, he is supposed to have said that a wise person should never forego. Forego probably means switch something, or change, or substitute, or what? Предшествовать. Never forego certain pleasures of the present for uncertain, merely possible pains of the future. Forego. Ну да, yeah. So it's pretty much if a person is sitting, drinking wine, eating fine food, or eating food, drinking fine wine, and someone tells, "Let's go somewhere," and there is a bigger party, and there's a better wine there, and there's kind of there are women there. They fucking bless. It's not a good example. Okay, he has food, wine, and women. And another one comes and says, "There's a bigger party there. There are more women there. There's better wine. There's better food. There's more something." And this one tells, "Why would I uh, leave that? Because where is the uh, what's the name of this guarantee? Where is the guarantee of what's there? Okay, what if I leave all these good things, I go there and this shit. I come back here and everything is lost." So two things come to my mind when I read this: the question of guarantee, and the question of uh, uh, fuck. Just wait a second. The question of values, value, value. The question of if so he values. No, wait, value. Ценность, важность, достоинство, ценности, ценность, цена, ценить должно быть глагол. Оценить, высказывать мнение, дать оценку, длительное сочетание. Okay, so one who values. So if he values something where he is, he will probably need guarantee that there are better things there. But another thing that came to my mind is that it's a bit utopian. How would you say? Is there such a word? Utopian, of or pertaining to or resembling a utopia. A utopia, ideally perfect state, especially in its social and political and moral aspects. Ideally perfect state. Sure. A work of fiction, a book written, an imaginary place considered to be perfect. Utopia, блять, ты что, серьезно нахуй, блять? I've always thought that it's an opposite thing. When you say utopia, блять, it means that it's bad. Probably, no? Wait. I'll have a look. Так. Пиздец. So if it means this, then probably there are some interesting. Fuck, блять. Because I thought it's such a simple thing to understand that, and I thought that completely. Wait a fucking second, блять. I thought it's completely different. Wait, I've always thought that, блять, utopia is something that a land that is lost, a misery, блять. It's everything is bad, блять, like everything. And this is utopia. And I thought always, when I heard the word utopian, блять, I have always thought that it's something bad, блять. So But now I read here and I see that it has two completely opposite meanings, блядь. One of them is that unmakeable fantasy. Неосуществимая, несбыточная мечта, фантазия. То есть maybe that means that probably and another one is that it's an ideal social ideal socium that doesn't have any scientific explanation. So probably maybe the first meaning is the main, and the second one appeared later on, and it meant that if you are in this world, it is probably, if you don't make something in this world to be somehow justified or scientifically proved, then probably it's just a dream, and nothing. It's just doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. Пиздец. If it doesn't exist, then it's something like a misery, or something like it's just a dream. It's just a dream, and if you want to be a good world, probably a good world. If you live in a good world, probably then you made something to be in a good world. If you made something that to be in a good world, then probably you know what it is. It's somehow connected to the science. It's justified. It's proven. It's present. And it's true. So if it's true, then probably it's less utopian, because utopia is a dream world, probably. Ideal socium that doesn't have scientific explanation, and also there's such a statement that there are no ideal things in the world. I don't know, блядь. But it's interesting, because I have always thought that utopian means that it's a bad word, a bad uh, uh, place, bad place. I'll go online and have a look and write down utopia and have a look what it shows just in images. I there will probably be uh, some strange, not strange, but questionable things there. Let's have a look. Let's, yeah, yeah, have a look. I don't know. That's the thing, that it's a mixture. No, I don't know. Have a look at that. It's fucking dark, блядь. The weather is fucked. Yeah, it's a big city, but it may mean that there's no nature, блядь. It just shows that there's few nature, not that much light. It's too overcrowded. It's busy, блядь. Something is destroyed. Here, look at that. Utopian. So everything is destroyed. He doesn't have teeth. He looks at him as if, what the fuck is gonna happen? I don't know. Something strange is flying in the sky. The sky is dark. It's war happening, блядь. Have a look at that. They live in the cave. it's dark, just a bit of lights going into there because it's like they hope for something good, but like probably maybe something is gonna happen to make it better. They are forced to be in this cave, probably, блядь. I don't know by what. By weather or by hostile environment. I don't know. But it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing. Have a look at that. This is utopia as well, блядь. It's fairyland, блядь. Fairy tale. It's really nice. It's spaceship. The spaceship is flying, the weather is nice, everything is green, clear water, блядь. There are lots of people, big buildings, people sitting on the grass, they like having food, and it's not the only image. Have a look at that. This is utopia as well. Utopia is everything is destroyed. Yet, what should I tell about that, блядь? Everything is destroyed. I don't know. Have a look at that. It's another opposite, black. Have a look. It's a megapolis that's built, well built. It's well developed. At the same time, there's nature here: trees, blue sky, blue water. Uh, Here, it's a fairyland. Yeah, yeah. It shows, but both of them can be a fairyland or some kind of unexisting ideal land, but I wouldn't say that it's ideal. Have a look at what's happening there. Пиздец. It's interesting. So it's good to give certain definition, about utopia when you say this word. Yeah, because a person may understand. Oh yeah, yeah, utopia, блядь. But which one? I don't know. So here he says, when asked about the painful consequences of his advice, he is supposed to have said that a wise person should never forego certain pleasures of the present for uncertain, merely possible pains of the future. The only restraint, on the pursuit of pleasure that Aristippus appears to have endorsed. Right. The only restraint on the pursuit of pleasure that Aristippus appears to have endorsed is restraint in the interests of increasing our capacity to experience more and more intense pleasures. Okay, so not few, but it should be more. It's interesting. Aristippus had the reputation of being willing to do anything for pleasure, including wearing women's clothes and dancing for King Dionysius of Syracuse. It's from this city, the king of this country where this city is a king. Yeah, that's the main person in this city. Women's clothes and dancing for King Dionysius of Syracuse. He was reputedly called the king's poodle. It's interesting. The Epicureans could hardly more different. Okay, could hardly more different of attitude to the Cyrenaics. The Epicureans could hardly more different of attitude to the Cyrenaics. What does it mean? So they are different from them a lot. They couldn't be more different from them. Different of attitude. Отношение, позиция, подход, поза. To the Cyrenaics. The Epicureans could hardly more different of attitude to the Cyrenaics. According to negative hedonism, pleasure is of value. Pleasure is of value because of its role in eliminating pain. Yeah, it's really nice, but the teachings about Epicureans are at least based on his works. But something that is said about uh, I, what's his name? Aristippus isn't based on his original works. Uh, it's based on something that commentators said, and this is like a broken telephone. How do you say? I don't know. Uh, we call it usually a broken telephone. When somebody sells something, this one said it in a different way, another one in a different, and completely and finally it's a different way, a different thing. So, according to negative hedonism, pleasure is of value because of its role in eliminating pain. Yeah, that's I thought about it because when it said that he is the king's poodle, I thought that it may bring pain to him. Then probably it brings more uh, pleasure than pain. That's why he said that should be more, блядь. Probably he had pain, блядь. I don't know, because if he said I need more pleasure, that means that he's suffering from pain, блядь. And something brought pain to him, probably because that he was a poodle, блядь. I don't know. The Epicureans, I wouldn't say that he was, because it's just something what's said about him. It's not his original work, блядь, and I don't know him personally. The Epicureans could hardly... Okay, the end of all our actions is to be free from pain and fear. The end of all our actions is to be free from pain and fear. And when once we have attained all this, the tempest of the soul is laid. Tempest. Буря. Электронная слежка. The tempest of the soul is laid. Хуй знает. Okay. The tempest of the soul is laid. It means that the bad things that happen inside of your soul are decreased, removed, or there are no bad stuff happening inside of your soul. That's why it said it's late, so it's calmed down. It's all right. When we are pained, because of the absence of pleasure, then and then only do we feel the need of pleasure. So we need pleasure only when we are in pain. Wherefore we call pleasure the alpha and omega of a blessed life. Okay, Epicurus' letter to Minoceus. The magnitude of pleasure reaches its limit in the removal of all pain. When pleasure is present, so long as it is uninterrupted, there is no pain either of body or of mind or of both together. When pleasure is present, so long as it is uninterrupted, there is no pain either of body or of mind or of both together. So if pleasure is uninterrupted and it exists or continues, then there is no pain of body or mind. Epicurus Principles Doctrines 3. It seems then that Epicurus held that the removal of all pain was the greatest pleasure. Yeah. Distinct from the most intense or sensuous pleasure. Distinct from the most intense or sensuous pleasure. Most sensuous pleasure. So it says it's the greatest pleasure. Why? Because it has magnitude. So to remove all pain, there needs to be a great pleasure. Great pleasure. So uh, and it should last. If there is great pleasure and it lasts, then there is no pain. Um, so maybe this means that the most intense or sensuous pleasures doesn't last long. Probably that. Pleasure is not a positive quantity. Pleasure is not a positive quantity that we can have more and more of. It is not an ornament or possession in the principle. Okay, bodily pleasure does not increase when the pain of want has been removed. Doesn't Bodily pleasure does not increase when the pain of want has been removed. When the pain of want has been removed. After that, it only admits of variation. Okay. This leads Epicurus to hold that we can't distinguish a happy life from an unhappy one by measuring the amount of pleasure in it. This leads Epicurus to hold that we can't distinguish a happy life from an unhappy one by measuring the amount of pleasure in it. A life of pleasure is to be judged its quality by the preponderance of pleasure in it. Preponderance, what does that mean? Преобладание. Yeah. A life of pleasure is to be judged its quality by the preponderance of pleasure in it. So there's more pleasure than pain. That's why it's a good life. It's a good quality life. Пиздец, блядь. Uh, in example, by the absence of pain in it, or absence of pain in it, not by the quality. Что-то не понял, блядь. A life of pleasure is to be judged its quality by the preponderance of pleasure in it. In example, by the absence of pain in it, not by the quantity. Not by the quantity. Again, I mixed two words: quality and quantity. But it doesn't happen it doesn't happen anytime. Anyways, anyhow, not by the quantity. Quality, not by the quantity. By the absence of pain in it, not by the quantity. Not by the quantity of pain. Unlimited time and limited time afford an equal amount of pleasure. Unlimited time and limited time afford an equal amount of pleasure. Okay, so it means that, for instance, a person who lived 50 years compared to a person who lived 100 years are the same because they had the same amount of pleasure. Okay, if we measure the limits, amount of pleasure, an equal amount of pleasure. If we measure the limits of that pleasure by reason. The flesh receives as unlimited. The flesh receives as unlimited the limits of pleasure. As unlimited the limits of pleasure. So pleasure is unlimited. And to provide it requires unlimited time. And to prove that it's unlimited, there needs to be time unlimited. The time needs to be unlimited. But it is unlimited, isn't it? But the mind intellectually grasping what the end and limit of the flesh is, and okay, but the mind intellectually grasping what the end and limit of the flesh is, and banishing the terrors of the future, procures, okay, доставать, добывать, procures a complete and perfect life, and we have no longer any need of unlimited time. But the mind intellectually grasping what the end and limit of the flesh is, and banishing the terrors of the future, procures a complete and perfect life, and we have no longer any need of unlimited time. Nevertheless, the mind does not shun pleasure. Nevertheless, the mind does not shun pleasure, and even when circumstances make death imminent, okay, блять, I'll have a look at these two words. Avoid and stay away from deliberately, stay clear of. Okay, so nevertheless, the mind does not shun pleasure. Mind does not avoid pleasure. I don't know. Yeah, wait. So when pleasure uh, becomes something else, because it's said that pleasure may change into something else, sort of, something like. So the mind does not shun pleasure. So you may think that, but I'm not gonna have this anymore. I don't want to, because it's gonna be pain. It's not pleasure anymore. It's not pleasure anymore to, I don't know, eat something or something. For me now, at least, yeah, I'm doing this. Yeah, because I know how much I need to breathe. And this means that the mind, it tells that the mind does not shun pleasure. So the mind does not avoid pleasure, because you know that before it was a pleasure, but as soon as you have gratified your need, it may become something else. Not only pleasure, maybe something neutral. Not only pain, maybe something neutral. A neutral kind of puts you into the into some kind of other state. Yeah. Does not shun pleasure, and even when circumstances make death imminent, I'll have a look at what that means. Close in time about to occur. And even when circumstances make death imminent, the mind does not lack enjoyment of the best life. Nevertheless, the mind does not shun pleasure, and when and even when circumstances make death imminent, the mind does not lack enjoyment of the best life. Oh, it's really nice. It's good. He who understands the limits of life knows that it is easy to obtain that it's easy to obtain that which removes the pain of want and makes the whole of life complete and perfect. He who understands the limits of life knows that it is easy to obtain that which removes the pain of want and makes the whole of life complete and perfect. Thus, he has no longer any need of things. Thus, he has no longer any need of things which involve struggle. Thus, he has no longer any need of things which involve struggle. Epicurus principle. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's probably important to know how much pleasure you need, because if you don't know how much pleasure you need, you will make this pleasure something else, something neutral or pain, and thus, or therefore, out of this, you may think that a person who doesn't know how much pleasure he needs will always have to find new pleasure, because he cannot, or wait, yeah, or wait until the moment when when necessity and pleasure appears. So pretty much he makes pleasure pain, and he will have to wait until pain occurs, so that he still needs to, so that he uh, so that this pain becomes pleasure again, so that he can remove pain. Блять, пиздец. Yeah, probably what it means is that hedonist, uh, the one who is a good hedonist, he knows how much pleasure he needs. He doesn't uh, take 10 kilograms of something to eat when he knows that he will only eat at that time, will only eat one portion. Yeah. Which is less than 10 kilos. Okay. The key to this good life, a life free of mental and physical pain, is simplicity. This increases our chances of attaining the tranquility Epicureans are after, and also makes us less dependent on fortune, and the influence of others. Epicurus distinguishes three kinds of desire. First, he distinguishes between natural desires and unnatural desires. Yeah, but wait. Okay, the video has been lasting for 1 hour and 44 minutes already, and after this point, I will be doing briefer explanation, because it's just in the middle. Distinguishes three kinds of desires. First, he distinguishes between natural desires and unnatural desires. Natural desires are those that arise from our nature alone, without the influence of social convention, without those that arise from our nature alone, without the influence of social convention. Okay, Okay, wait. Convention. Culture or fashion. Normative example. Okay. Of social convention, culture, or fashion. Desire that arises from our nature alone, that doesn't come from social convention, culture, or fashion. Thus, desires for food, sex, companionship, and security are natural. Yeah, food, sex, companionship, and security are natural. Desires for wealth and fame are unnatural. Uh, Natural desires are further distinguished between those that are necessary and those that are unnecessary. So natural desires further on are divided into necessary and unnecessary. Necessary natural desires are those whose dissatisfaction yields pain. Whose dissatisfaction yields pain. Mhm. Necessary natural desires. Necessary natural desires are those whose dissatisfaction yield pain. Okay. A desire for food is natural and necessary. Some natural desires are unnecessary. No pain results from a failure to satisfy them. Okay. The desire for exotic foods, I don't know, not always necessary. Fancy clothes, probably not always, not necessarily, yeah. And sex are unnecessary. I don't know, блять. Sex is probably a necessary and natural desire. Though natural desires. A wise person thinks Epicurus reduces their desires. Epicurus reduces uh, reduces their desires to the natural and the necessary, thus reduces their desires to the natural and the necessary, thus maximizing their capacity. I will highlight that because for hedonists this is one of the main things probably. Okay, so a wise person thinks Epicurus reduces their desires to the natural and the necessary, thus maximizing their capacity to move through life with a perfect tranquility, without gratifying non-natural and unnecessary desires. With a perfect tranquility of mind and generally an absence of mental and physical pain. Okay, okay. Epicurean philosophy is remarkably modern in some ways. It is robustly materialistic and insists upon annihilation of the person at death, and insists upon annihilation of the person at death. Seriously? Annihilation of the person at death. Although Epicurus was happy to acknowledge the existence of the gods, he thought them perfect and self-sufficient and not at all concerned with human affairs, and not at all concerned with human affairs. Gods are blessed and indestructible beings, and Epicurus writes of them. A blessed and indestructible being has no trouble himself, and brings no trouble and brings no trouble upon any other being. And brings no trouble upon any other being. So he is free from anger, and partially, for all such things imply weakness. Blah. So he is free from anger, and partially, and partiality for all such things imply weakness. Okay, so he is free from anger, and partiality for all such things imply weakness. Okay, thus Epicurus believes that fear of the gods is irrational. Fear of the gods, of our fate in the underworld after death, in the underworld after death. Underworld, ебать, is it utopia, блядь? Who знает fucking what's gonna happen there? Fate in the underworld after death, uh, along with our fear, of death itself, second death, I don't know, with or death in the underworld, along with our fear of death itself, are some of the main sources of mental pain or anguish for people. Thus, Epicurean philosophy seeks to remove these sources of mental pain. Given the thesis of personal annihilation and death, Epicurus argues that death should be of no concern to us. In what is probably the most famous of Epicurus' sayings, "To come down to us," he writes, I don't know, it's gonna be more difficult now if it's a close translation. Maybe not. Accustom thyself. Okay, second word, I don't know. Себя, да. Accustom thyself to believe that death is nothing to us, for good and evil implies sentience. Sentience. For good and evil implies sentience, and death is the privation of all sentience. Okay. Therefore, a right understanding that death is nothing to us makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Okay, accustom thyself to believe that death is nothing to us, because good and evil imply sentience, and death is the privation of all sentience. Therefore, a right understanding that death is nothing to us makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Yeah, it's if I understood it properly, then it's all right. Only if good and evil present uh, anywhere at all the time, uh, and there is no such thing that death. There is no such thing that makes you not alive. So, which means that accustom thyself to believe that death is nothing to us. Death is nothing to us because good and evil imply sentience. So good and evil, you feel, you have feelings. So you have feelings, you have senses, and you feel good and evil. And if you feel good and evil, and at the same time death is privation of all senses. So death is privation. Wait a second. Нужда, недостаток. Okay, so it has two translations. That's what I said, блядь. Comparing, if it was in original, it could be way more easier to understand it. And okay, anyways, at the same time, death is privation, which means недостаток, lack or absence of all sentience. So death is the absence of all sentience. But everything is good and evil. Everything. And we feel good and feel evil. Which means that there is no death because you feel good and feel evil from anything. And death is the absence of feeling. So, which means that there is no death because you feel everything. What if person will, блядь, fucking say, okay, I didn't feel anything from that. What does that mean? That it does a death? That is it death? I don't know. Therefore, a right understanding that death is nothing to us, makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Wait, mortality, смертность еще. Yeah. Makes the mortality of life enjoyable. Okay, maybe it means that after death you will not feel any good and evil because good may become bad and you will have to find new good and you will feel evil or bad pain or something. So mortality doesn't have feelings and that's why it's enjoyable. Ой, блядь, пиздец, it's complicated нахуй. Not by adding to life an illimitable life, but by taking away the yearning after immortality. Yearning. Prolonged unfulfilled desire or need. Понятно. Понятно. For life has no terrors for him who has thoroughly understood that there are no terrors for him in a season to live. Foolish, therefore, is the man who says that he fears death, not because it will pain when it comes, but because it pains in the prospect. Whatever causes no annoyance, when it is present, causes only a groundless pain in the expectation. Death, therefore, the most awful of evils, is nothing to us, seeing that when... Oh, ебать. Wait, death, therefore, the most awful of evils, is nothing to us. So, and here you said that, блядь, death is present because it's evil, but you just don't feel it. Is nothing to us, seeing that when we are, death is not come, and when death is come, we are not. It is nothing then, earlier to the living or the dead. It is nothing then, either to the living or the dead, for with the living for with the living it is not, and the dead exist no longer. Okay, блядь. I understood what it said, but not completely. It's so complicated and mixed, and I will just highlight it because maybe afterwards I will need it somehow. What hedonist thought about it, please? Yeah. Epicurean arguments about rational attitudes to death have dominated Western philosophical discussion. Of the subject and continued to do so today. The argument goes like this: if it is rational to fear death, If it is rational to fear death, this must be because there is something terrible about being dead. But death is nothing to us because we are not around anymore for it to be something to us. So death cannot be terrible. Therefore, it's irrational to fear death. The argument, needless to say, is highly controversial. It is considerably strengthened, however, when we consider the negative hedonistic presupposition of Epicureanism. If the experience of pain is the only evil we can encounter, and we do not think of life merely as an opportunity to accumulate pleasure experiences, then non-existence cannot harm. It does not entail suffering, and also it deprives us of the opportunity to accumulate greater pleasures. This is not the loss of something valuable. According to Epicurus, the good life does not consist in accumulation of pleasure or happiness or virtue. Accumulation, okay. Lucretius, the Roman poet and expositor of Epicurean philosophy, introduced another argument against the fear of death. It is called the symmetry argument. In his great poem De Rerum Natura, Book 3, 832-42, Lucretius asks us to think of the time before we were born. It is not a gloomy or fearful state of the world. We do not find anything terrible in the time before we were born. So why think there will be anything terrible about the time after death? Вот, блять, this is iron logic. This is something, I don't know, this is ingenious, how would you say, right? Yeah, this is genius. But there could be also questions. There could be also questions. Why? Because, for instance, uh, he says that we didn't exist before, uh, and we don't know anything about what was before, or something, but like something that he said here, right? But the question is, when we live, we have feelings, we have memories, we have dreams, and we get to know what was before. So, and sometimes we are in the state of a dream, of sleep. When we sleep, we're in a state of dream. Sometimes we see dreams, and when you are in a dream, you sometimes doesn't feel anything. So you doesn't feel existing here, or you feel some kind of middle existence. When you're kind of in a dream, you do something in a dream. Yeah, you see a dream, but controlled dream. When you do something in a dream, not just seeing, but doing, but you understand that, yeah, it's a dream, and kind of I'm gonna wake up soon or something. Just normal things that happen, right? So this is what means that after death we may uh, continue our existence uh, in some other form or in some other state, which means that you may be in a dream, or, well, you understand what I mean, because uh, who knows, maybe before your birth you were in a dream, or you were a dream before your birth or something. I don't know, блядь. You were an idea, блядь, or something. You weren't even in our plans or ideas or something. You know what they say. So, another way of developing the thought is this. If we fear missing out on having more and more pleasures, if we fear missing out on having more and more pleasures, which postponement of death would bring, then why do we not regret having been born earlier? Because we could have had more pleasures. Epicurus has a ready answer. We do not regret having been born earlier because we do not measure the good of our lives in terms of the amount of pleasure it contains. Okay, but in terms of the quality of our lives, the preponderance of pleasure over pain. But the preponderance of the pleasure over pain. Okay. What is the role of virtue in Epicurean philosophy? Epicureans recognized the centrality of the virtues to the pursuit of a good life. Centrality. Prudence. Particular wisdom of phronesis. Благоразумие, понятно. Practical wisdom of phronesis. Что такое phronesis? Блять. And so on. Temperance and so on. Так, prudence, practical wisdom of phronesis, justice, temperance and so on. Yeah, but here it's another big thing that's introduced into this lecture, the virtue. Блядь. There are other philosophers who based their works only on the subject of virtue. I'm not sure, maybe some of them I have done already, maybe I will do them in the further videos, but kind of it's an introduction of a big subject into the lecture, which is very close to the end of the lecture. So it's like, by the way, there's also this thing, ебать, and Epicureans recognized the centrality of the virtues to the pursuit of a good life. Prudence, practical wisdom of Renaissance, justice, temperance, and so on. Justice, temperance, prudence, justice, temperance. Okay, this may seem to resemble views of the great Hellenic philosophers. This may seem to resemble views of the great Hellenic philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. However, the crucial difference is this. Aristotle, for instance, thought of the virtues as constitutive of the good life, то есть составляющая. Eudaimonia, he claimed, just is a life of virtuous activity and the pleasure that yields. Ебать, я посмотрю, что это такое. Just a second. A contented state of being happy and healthy and prosperous. Понятно. He claimed, just is a life of virtuous activity and the pleasure that yields. To live a happy eudaimonic human life, in part, just is to live a virtuous one. Epicurus thought, okay, so to have everything that you want, you just need to live a eudaimonic life, ебать. And I'm gonna tell you what's the eudaimonic life, пиздец вообще. In part, just is to live a virtuous one. Epicurus, okay, human life in part just is to live a virtuous one. Epicurus thought of the virtues more instrumentally. They are not good in themselves. They are only good because of their tendency to yield a pleasant life, where the pleasantness of a life can be defined quite independently of a virtuous life. It is a life of true pleasure, tranquility and absence, понятно, of pain. Понятно. The virtue of justice illustrates the instrumental character of Epicurean conceptions of the virtues. Justice, according to Epicurus, is purely a matter of expediency. Окей. Что это такое? Целесообразность. Is purely a matter of expediency. Justice, according to Epicurus, is purely a matter of expediency, a matter of preventing harm. A justice system is like a contract people make with each other to ensure their security. Consider their claims from the principal doctrines. Actually, about this subject, there's some other philosopher who I don't know have I covered yet already or not. Natural justice is a pledge of reciprocal benefit. Natural justice is a pledge of reciprocal benefit. Pledge of reciprocal benefit. So I think I've just said about Epicurus. That's him who said that. To prevent one man from harming or being harmed by another. So they agree to not harm each one. There never was an absolute justice, but only an agreement made in reciprocal intercourse in whatever localities now and again from time to time, providing against the infliction of suffering of harm. Injustice is not in itself evil, but only in its consequence, the terror which is excited by apprehension that those appointed to punish such offenses will discover the injustice. Okay. It is impossible for a man who secretly violates the terms of the agreement not to harm or be harmed to feel confident that he will remain undiscovered, even if he has already escaped 10,000 times. For until his death he is never sure that he will not be detected. Epicurus, okay. Here we see the instrumental nature of Epicurus' conception of the virtues in full force. The virtue of justice is simply a mean of preventing harm. It is not a good in itself, and there are various ways in which it may accomplish its end, ways that vary from time to time and place to place. Okay, so Epicurus like, okay, but I have food, alcohol, sex, and these are my pleasures. And but we have a pledge not to harm each one. If you, блядь, somehow not let me have my pleasures, I will fucking punish you and put you in the prison. Пиздец, блядь. Hey, police! Something like that. And place to place. If a person commits an unjust act, they have not done themselves an intrinsic evil. They have not done themselves an intrinsic evil, as Socrates would have instead. They have merely laid themselves open to the fear being caught and the pain of punishment. Понятно? Okay. The end of the lecture is a bit bitey. I mean, it's in kind of chunks. So I said that a big introduction of an introduction of a big subject in the end of the lecture, and I've spent 15 minutes to go through it. But the thing is that it's also interesting. Anyways, so we've gone through Epicurus, and it's an interesting thing. I'm not sure when the next video is gonna be published, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do another one on this. I'm not sure who. I thought maybe Stoicism is the next one, but probably could be another philosopher, Monaesus, I'm not sure. I'll have a look. So, if you like these videos, just watch them. I don't know, you don't have to put like or leave a comment, but I would be I will enjoy reading through your comment if you will leave one. So there are other videos from this series of talking about philosophers, talks on the philosophers, um, talks about philosophers. So you are welcome to watch them, and also on my channel I have some other videos with music, games, and maybe quite soon I will have some other funny videos. I'm not sure, but I just think some other new content, to make some other new content or something. So anyways, I'll see you in the next video. See you soon, I'm not sure when, but have a good time. I wish you all the best, all the good, and all of those things. See ya.